So without further ado, let's go ahead and start introducing you to the people that you see up here on the stage, and I'll describe the panel one more time. To maximize ebook sales, it's critical to make the most of promotional opportunities with online retailers and to use new digital tools to do it. This panel will explore effective strategies for publishers who want to strengthen their presence and their relationship with the major retailers. So let me introduce you to this group on the panel. They're some of my very favorite people in the ebook business. The first is Erin Gorham. She's in the middle. She's the digital account manager at HarperCollins. She's worked at Harper for 11 years, starting as a national account assistant. As a digital account manager, Erin handles all adult imprints for most of the retailers. In her real life, she has a cat named Buster and puts on off-Broadway musicals about the movies Showgirls and Saved by the Bell.
I'm working on the VEA musical.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think we'd all attend.
No, I doubt it.
We also have Nathan Maharaj on the panel. He oversees an international team spanning 8 languages and a dozen countries as Kobo's director of merchandising. Nathan has always been a bookseller, starting part-time at Chapters, Canada's top national bookselling chain, in 1997, and joining Chapters Indigo's central category management team in 2006. In 2009, he joined Short Covers, Indigo's ebook initiative, which later that year became Kobo, the global ebook seller partnered with bookstores around the world. And he's got something you didn't ever see. And then I have Susan Ruszala on the end. She is the president of NetGalley, who provides secure digital galleys to a growing community of professional readers in North America, the UK, and Australia. Over 350 publishers and authors and nearly 200,000 reviewers, media, booksellers, librarians, and bloggers are using the service regularly to discover and review upcoming books. Susan has been launching, pitching, and polishing publishing technology ventures for over 15 years. The last 5 years as part of the NetGalley team. And finally, I'm Kelly Peterson, and I bring 18 years of marketing and merchandising experience to my role as Director of Client Services at Inscribe Digital, where I work with major trade publishers, university presses, independent and digital publishers, authors, and agents to maximize sales of ebooks in all genres. Prior to Inscribe, I worked at Borders Group for 14 years, starting my career at Walden Books, also as a bookseller like Nathan, and finishing by running the ebook program. So this is the group that's going to talk to you today, which is exciting, and we're going to talk about all the things that we think about when we're dealing with ebooks from a lot of different perspectives, which I'm pretty excited about. So we all want to know, how do you create a bestseller? How do you make a bestseller appear? This is one of our titles on Nook. It's Angel Bound, hitting #1. It's always a very exciting day. And all of the retailers display them in different spots. Apple bestsellers are always in the sidebar. Amazon, we've seen their bestseller list. It's on multiple pages. NetGalley actually uses bestsellers or most downloaded titles to drive some of their placements. And one of the ways that bestsellers are created is by creating pre-orders. So let's take a quick look at some of the placement for pre-orders and why. We've known for a long time that pre-orders drove sales. The Harry Potter phenomenon was largely driven by pre-orders, and you can see pre-orders actually grew by hundreds of thousands from book to book, which is where we all want to be. But online bookstores also give great placement to pre-orders. Here's an example of one of Inscribe's titles in pre-order on Apple. A book can actually become a #1 bestseller while it's still in pre-order on Amazon. And Kobo has several areas where they feature dozens of pre-orders in a scrolling carousel. And NetGalley is already generating lots of pre-pub reviews. So let's talk a little bit about pre-orders as a whole. And let's start with Nathan. So Nathan, Kobo and other retailers are dedicating a lot of space for pre-orders, which we just saw. What books work best in pre-order, and how does managing pre-order help a book on the day of sale?
So I'll talk about the books that work best as pre-orders. Am I audible? Is that carrying through the room? Yes, back of the room.
Could your microphone be closer?
It could be, but then I would feel like I'm taking it from Erin. But I'll live with that. So the types of books that work best as pre-orders, not surprisingly, it's genre fiction. And if you think about it, it kind of explains itself. Genre fiction, by definition, is structured in a way that the reader kind of knows what they're going to get. So as soon as they know the existence of the book, and it's by an author they like, and it's even including characters that they know about because it's a series, then the impulse to buy is immediately there. And as a retailer, we want to capture that impulse as soon as they show up on the site, because they're going to hear about it. The author is going to say, I just finished my book, and then they're going to come look for it. It doesn't exist yet, but at the point where it exists, so you really want to capture that early, because that reader intention to buy is so precious. So how they drive sales? Well, it's on release day, pre-orders are great because a book doesn't have a cold start. It's not getting born into the world. It's it's showing up as a as a 1,000-pound gorilla if it's built up enough pre-orders. And what at Kobo, what we love about that is you've suddenly got all kinds of juice for personalized recommendations, all kinds of library correlations that you can make between different users who've all bought this book. So while we're merchandising it up front in the store, in the back end we're making all kinds of calculations to find the customers who haven't visited us yet. This is going to go in their email, personalized recommendations that they're going to get that weekend.
That's great. And Erin, how far in advance should publishers put a title out for a pre-order? And how do you review those pre-orders prior to their launch date?
All right, well, we definitely try to get the pre-order pages up as soon as possible. We're looking at 6 months, even a year if we have it, and then as much metadata as possible. It's important to have those pre-orders up and to have people buying them and to get to the top 100 so that we can build the bestseller in the first couple of weeks. It's a great indicator on how we're doing. We look at the pre-orders, and if they're low, then we go to marketing and we figure out if we need more advertising, if the author needs to do more outreach, what we need to do to really get those sales so that out of the gate we already have a bunch of sales and can make the bestseller. So it's all about awareness, and that's what pre-orders really are.
Okay. And Susan, most people do use NetGalley prior to a book's release, so we're dealing largely with pre-orders. What are some best practices to get reviews on retailer sites once the book goes live?
Yeah, so I think before I even answer that, I think it's interesting to say, why is NetGalley on a panel about ebook bestsellers? Because we don't promote only ebooks. In fact, most of our books are print books, and we don't sell any books. But I think the answer to that question is that pre-publication reviews and early buzz about a title is really, really important to fueling pre-orders and to getting retailers interested in merchandising your title. So, there's nothing more powerful than somebody getting an early copy of your book and then talking about it, at a retail site or getting that party going the way that you put it, Nathan. So that's really important for us. As far as strategies for getting reviews, I think these are simple marketing strategies. What is the audience that's going to like your title? Are you asking for a review? How are you asking for a review? Is it an authentic transaction? So some of the basic things like thinking about how you're messaging that title and pitching that title are essential to us as well.
So, one of the things that I think is coming out of this group is the earlier the better. And one thing that I want to mention is going back to what Nathan said is that as soon as somebody finishes a book in a series in particular, when it reaches that point that they are done and they're ready for that next book, it's best to have that book up for pre-order already. We encourage our clients to do it early so that book 2 is up before the launch date of book 1, so that they can have that quick turn. And we've found that to be a very effective strategy as well. Okay. So moving on to general merchandising. So once the book is live, here are some placements that you'll see on the sites themselves. Kobo has a great Best of the Month program. Amazon, all the retailers do seasonal promotions around big holidays, Mother's Day, Father's Day. Father's Day is huge for books. Barnes & Noble has a lot of those week's biggest books that they feature, and of course there's the iBooks Showcase, which is a rotating placement on all of their pages, but primarily the books page is hit. And of course, NetGalley has a lot of outreach as well, and they do a lot of email direct marketing. So let's talk a little bit about the general marketing. So Nathan, what areas on your site are the most consistent sellers, and how is the merchandising different from U.S. to the global markets?
I would love to be able to go all Malcolm Gladwell on you and tell you, actually, the place people most tend to shop is, 2,000 pixels down and to the right if they're left-handed. But it's not. It's the top of the first page they hit. That's where the meat is. There's a certain amount of scrolling activity that happens, but nothing's been reinvented. Retail's still the same structure. There is a front of the store, and that is precious space. What was
the U.S. and global
US
market.
and
How do you
global.
determine what to put where?
Pre-orders help certainly, and we still rely on our dear sales reps with our publishing partners. It's a lot of information to aggregate, but it is that book selling alchemy. You're trying to figure out what's going to hit, and you've got a few more data points than you do in print, but shockingly not that many more. Things like NetGalley are helpful insofar as it is another way to measure pre-release buzz, because primarily your prime merchandising space is going to be for new books that other people like HarperCollins is promoting this book at the same time. It would be a good idea for me to have it in front of my store because I've got a good chance of a customer showing up at my store having heard about this other book with the intention to at least check it out.
Great. So getting it up on the front, that's important.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I really wanted to go Gladwell on this, but there is no Gladwell on this.
And Erin, as a publisher, when you plan your title, what things do you keep in mind when pitching placement?
Well, I just try to sweet talk Nathan and give him back rubs so we get all our books on the front page. What's cool about the digital world is print selling is sometimes 6 months out, and when we're talking to retailers about ebooks, it's a little closer to on sale, which helps because we'll have the final cover up, we'll have the metadata up, we'll have the author's publicity plan, the marketing plan all set up, which is great. We're definitely talking to them about the past books, how the backlist is doing, any price promotions we have going on with the backlist. And also something kind of new and very helpful is the author's social media outreach. We definitely are talking to retailers and letting them know how many Facebook fans this author has, how many Twitter, how many Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, whatever helps them and lets them know the authors are posting about their books and driving traffic to the retailer is really helpful.
It's a lot of stuff to keep in mind, but it's all important stuff as a retailer. One of the things that I know that with ebooks, timeliness is really critical, and you can respond a lot faster with ebooks as well. So when a print run, for example, runs low, that's a great time for the ebook to start getting featured and getting more placement. I know we used to think about that sort of thing at Borders as well. And Susan, NetGalley has merchandising of its own. What merchandising areas have the greatest click-through and popularity on that stuff?
For NetGalley, we're not trying to accumulate sales. We're trying to accumulate people who are interested in reviewing the book, right? So merchandising is really, really important to us. For us, email marketing works great. I think, Nathan, you had some nice turn of phrase when we practiced, which was like, it's not that glamorous, but it works, and you said it in a better way. But still, it's very, very effective for us to put an email like the one that you see in front of people who are likely to read and review that book and to recommend it. That is a very merchandising-centric paid promotion way of getting in front of influencers. But the other thing that we see is to create and put in front of members tools that they can use themselves to recommend to their peers and to their own audiences. So for example, we have a tool where when a reviewer, a blogger, a librarian reviews a title in NetGalley, they can also share that review with their own Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook networks. And that's merchandising in a very intimate, personal way, and it's not a paid promotion in any way. No publisher is contributing to that, but it's extremely powerful as an amplifier of that person's review.
That makes a lot of sense, and actually retailer sites and publisher sites often do the same. The idea of getting the message out about what you're reading is a powerful one. More people want to try it, and it works well.
I would add, sorry, I feel like my remark was really dispiriting, like, get on the front or you're screwed. It's not actually the case. It is a little bit dispiriting to feel that only the front page will work. So I mean, one of the things we're working on now is more fronts of the store, because people who love romance books don't care that there's a new Michael Lewis. It doesn't matter to them. It's news. It's not news for them. People who love the new Michael Lewis book don't care that there's a new Jim Butcher book maybe. So there's tendencies. People tend to want to read what they want to read, and so the idea of an objective front page is kind of dissolving. But still, whatever that front page is, whether it's A, B, C, D, or E, that's kind of the secret. That's still the sauce. The question is, how do you do all these other things to get the attention that gets you there?
All right. So let's move on to the thing everybody really wants to talk about is price. How do I use price to drive my sales? And here's some examples of some successful promotions where we see price as a big driver. The Kindle Daily Deal is one, the Barnes & Noble Daily Find. We were all super excited when Kobo started doing a daily deal. And of course, there's just visible themed promotions as well, like Apple's discount merchandising. They always have one spot in their carousel where they're featuring discounted themed titles. So in the ebooks price promotions, I'm afraid Susan's not going to have a lot to offer, as her service is free. But Nathan and Erin do. So Nathan, are there any price promotions that do particularly well at Kobo? And what role do targeted email newsletters play in these promotions?
So yeah, the daily deal running now for 6 months. We've learned a few things. We've learned that nonfiction's tough. Maybe what conclusion to draw from that, I don't know. The serious nonfiction reader isn't price motivated, so they won't be bothered by this silly nonsense of discounting. Not sure, but again, genre fiction dominates. People are a voracious reader is always looking for the next thing, the next author, the next series, the next something. And that low price point is just catnip for sampling. It gives you that sense of what am I going to try next. But the price has to be low enough that it's really substantial. It's a substantial discount off of the regular price, and that varies by market, right? U.S. highly price sensitive. I understand there's this company that's named after a river that really likes driving prices through the floor, and that's sort of taken the whole market down to turning up its nose at anything more than the price of a coffee to buy anything. There are other markets where that's not the case. There's even where you look at Canada, which is like the U.S. but with maple syrup and more U's in the spelling. There's tolerance for a couple more dollars, and something will still be called a deal, will still be treated as high value. So we can still beat that drum of urgency. Get it now. It's cheap for now and not forever. It's daily deals are really about people finding the next thing they want to be obsessed with, which is just so much fun.
And speaking about finding that obsession, Erin, when you're choosing the suggested price promo titles, what are your considerations, and how do you decide what titles to run, and also how far out do you plan?
Well, low price is really one tool in our sales and marketing to grow an author and a series and a brand, and it definitely, we try to be very smart about it. We plan it out several months in advance, and it's all driving to the front list, it's driving to the series. But what we make sure to really do is to take that book that we're going to low price and add an excerpt to it, add some buy links, put some author information, drive to their websites, do whatever we can with that book so that when the reader gets the low price book, they'll be motivated to find the next in the series or the front list. So that's super important.
Yeah, so planning is key. It sounds like tying it together with either a promotional strategy or another title, really critical. And knowing where you want to go and giving yourself enough time to get there is crucial. All right. And of course, we also have free ebooks. That comes up a lot, especially in the KDP land. But we have a lot of different free opportunities. Apple Book of the Week is one. Obviously, there are free bestsellers. I have been loving Kobo's free first in series page. I'm winding down. few recently, to try some new authors. And then they also have category displays with editorial picks, which I love because free is so rarely curated. So in the free world, free doesn't make money for you, Nathan, and obviously there's a little expense in delivering those titles. What does make free worthwhile to you, and what have you learned about the customers who use free?
Free is really, retail is all funnel, right? It's you get a certain number of customers get to this stage, and then a certain percentage of them carry on to the next stage, and then the next stage, and then at some point they buy something, they do something you want them to do. And free is great for getting people to engage with the service. You know, you can have this book for free, just install the app and set up an account. Or you know, you can have this book for free, please start using the service again. Maybe you've gone dormant for 6 months or something, and you know, there's an incentive to re-engage. Or for you know, a highly active customer, free is tactically it's a way for primarily self-published authors at this point to gain attention. You know, free is a tool that solves certain kinds of problems. Doesn't solve all of them, but one of the problems it can solve is getting attention. With series, we do see a really high kind of stickiness from volume 1 to volume 2. Obviously, big drop off. You're gonna get a lot more people showing up to pay nothing than you will pay $1.99 or $2.99 for volume 2. But once they're into 2 or 3, the probability of drop off just continues to erode. So you get this really nice follow through. So there's a high incentive for authors who want to get noticed, want to get their series noticed, want to get their body of work noticed, to make a nice, easy on-ramp. And one of the ways they can do that is free. And we've seen it proven out enough times that we're not afraid of free. We think it's got its place. Some free things we will ignore because we think it's money on the table. But other things are clearly a great way for a reader to hook themselves on the next amazing thing they love.
And to piggyback on that, Erin, how does Harper experiment with free?
We've done quite a bit and learned a lot of lessons, which is great. It is definitely a free ebook. We see that as a marketing tool, and we're going to use it to build the author. We're going to use it to really grow the series, and we're not going to do it unless we've really made a huge marketing plan around it, if we have retail support for it. Other than that, it's kind of a waste of time, and we want to make sure the author is going to be pushing it a bunch too. So it really is to grow awareness, and just like I talked about with the low price books, we're making sure the file is kind of souped up with excerpts and ads and everything we can to help grow the audience for that author.
Yeah, one of the things that we found at Inscribe that just correlates with all of this is if you have one book, giving it away free isn't giving you any benefit, because that's a person who's now never going to buy that book. And people advocate moderately, but they have to really love something to advocate for it. But if you have a series and you can draw that person in and really, that if they could just read your words, they're going to buy book 2 and they're going to buy book 3, then free makes a ton of sense.
Right. Something we just did with James Rollins, who's one of our big authors. He was starting a new series that's kind of a spin-off of his bigger series. We had a short story that was leading up to the front list. We made it free. We made the file with the excerpt and everything else, and he has a huge platform, so he was pushing it out, and we saw a lot of pre-orders. We saw great success with that. So you don't have to do a full-length book for free to see results.
Excellent. And Susan, NetGalley's whole strategy is about putting free books in the right hands, in influencers' hands. What tools do you provide to help publishers leverage that giveaway?
So I think, when we think when you say NetGalley gives away free books, sometimes, to the right people, I think is really, really important there. So I think, for us, a book in exchange for a review, or just the promise of a review, is a different kind of currency. And that, that review has a value to the publisher. So if you are accumulating reviews from influencers or reviews from influencers as small as I have 100 fans or followers on Goodreads and I post everything there, that has a value to you. And one of the things that we encourage publishers to do is to think about the value of that compared to the other potential marketing dollars that you're spending. And so I think for us it's about definitely putting the books in the right hands. one of the tools that we offer is that you can, a member can request a title, but isn't necessarily approved for a review copy. And so there's a large body of people who are expressing interest in a title, but aren't actually getting that copy, for a variety of reasons. And so, that's a powerful interest as well. We've been talking with publishers about how to use that information, because those are people who were interested in your book and expressed enthusiasm for it.
And then the next area, and this is the part that I actually am most interested in, because in a digital society, connecting not just one-to-one, but one to a group is pretty critical. So we're going to talk a little bit about experiments in reaching customers. And we've been hearing a lot about, we've talked about NetGalley, and NetGalley is great because they're an intermediary between readers and publishers. And they have a lot of ways in order to do that. One thing we haven't talked about a lot yet, but I think is really critical, is recommendations, personal recommendations that appear on a site. So customers who bought this, bought that. Amazon recommendations that are targeted, recommended for you. Kobo does great recommendations. These are mine, by the way, so I know you can all tell I read sci-fi. And romance and all sorts of other stuff. But we've also talked about back matter. And this is a slide just from Inscribe. But I wanted to point out that if you look at we do a lot of back matter inserts. And those inserts have retailer-specific buy links. So we send a different file to Amazon than we do to Kobo, than we do to Barnes & Noble, and so on. And in those books, where there is a link to buy the next book or a suggestion to buy another book, we see tremendous returns. So out of this is a 3 different retailers comparison here, but out of the total sales of the book 1 that we've seen pre-orders for between 20 and 40% of book 2, just by having those back matter links in there. So being able to turn around and sell, a book again to 1 out of every 2 or 3 people is pretty phenomenal. And it speaks to, Harper's experience with back matter as well. And those are some of the ways that we've found that have been pretty critical ways in reaching customers. Nathan, how do you find that Kobo connects with its readers and the readers connect to you?
Connecting with, there's a bunch of ways to do it. Internally, connecting with the readers that we have, we think about it as kind of like a voluntary subscription. So that every customer has their rhythm, they have their pattern, they have their frequency with which they like to read and they like to buy. And we think about that in terms of when should we be alarmed that they haven't visited in a while, or they're not reading. And so we think about how to incentivize them to carry on with the book that they're with, or to go get something else. Clearly you're not having a good time. And as you say, the drumbeat of personalized recommendations has proven really, really effective in keeping people engaged. It's extraordinarily, it's a regular part of our CRM email schedule, and it converts really, really well. People like this stuff. We've got a big data team. They are real data scientists, and they work on optimizing this stuff. And they've been iterating on it for 2 years now, and we've learned a lot of stuff, and we're getting pretty good at it.
And Erin, how does Harper connect with its readers?
I like to call them all at night and ask them.
Yeah.
It doesn't scale, but it feels good.
Yeah. Well, definitely all of our imprints, and they have social media, which is the most obvious way to connect with readers. They have social media. Our Avon, our romance line, has a very engaged audience with social media and emails and everything. So that's one great way we're talking to people. We also have a program called Book Perk we launched a couple months ago, which is a daily email that has some low price promotions, it has contests, cover reveals, and we're really growing that audience, and it's a really great marketing tool that we've developed. And also, of course, just the authors reaching out through their social media makes a lot of sense in their emails and getting people engaged that way.
And Susan, NetGalley is connecting reviewers and publishers. Where does it do it best, and where are areas that you're continuing to grow?
Yeah, so I think 2 things. The first is that we believe that the data that we collect belongs in large part to our publishers. So a big piece of what we do is expose that to publishers so that they can use it, so that they can continue to have the conversation with the people who like to read and recommend their books. So I think that's one thing that's really, really important. The second thing I think is we don't call all of our readers every night, but we do we do that in our hearts. It sounds a little silly, but we have a really personal relationship with the people who are coming to our site. And our tone, these are essentially many professional readers, even if they're booksellers or they're librarians or they're bloggers, are doing this because they love your products and they want to talk about them and they want to recommend them. And so, kind of balancing, an authentic need to validate that and to help them be better at it and to let them know that you appreciate their efforts and giving them tools to do that is really, really important to making sure that they do review your titles more and more, and that they like NetGalley. So it's like the virtual equivalent of calling them and talking to them as much as we possibly can.
So there are lots of ways that we can reach out to our customers, and the more personal it is, the better, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or emails that are targeted, that connect with somebody, building a brand like Avon where you know that you're going to get what you're looking for, or whether it's building that direct relationship with your bloggers. It does make a critical difference in a book success. So that being said, that kind of goes over a lot of what we wanted to plan, which is perfect because now we have 10 minutes for questions and answers. I did want to provide some resources. I have copies of this up in our booth at Inscribe Digital in the Digital Zone, DC 2157, I believe. If anybody wants to have one to take home, or I can email it if you email me at kelly@inscribedigital.com. These are some of the things that talk about, whether it's Nathan's great article about pricing or retailer strengths and how to meet those retailer strengths as well, and how to get your book noticed. So that being said, if we want to go ahead and do some questions.
What booth are you in? What
Booth?
Yeah, the booth number.
DC 2157. Any questions about pricing or free, or you've got a retailer here on the hook if you want to sell your book?
It was very interesting, certainly educational, but you were talking a lot about books like Harry Potter and other books that are El Primo. I mean, they're way out there. How about how would you go about promoting online a first book for an author, or even a second or third, something less of a level?
Yeah, well, Harry Potter was rejected, 30 times before it was ever released. It did start out like one of those little books. So, but I absolutely hear what you're saying. As a new author, there are lots of things that you can do to get attention for your books. One of them is giving yourself a long runway, so that you have time to plan the marketing, to do outreach on Facebook, to let reviewers read your book on NetGalley, for example, before the book's on sale. And one of the things that we talked about a lot was pre-order. And the reason for that is pre-order sales will accumulate everything during that pre-order period and chunk it all onto the first day of sale. So it gives you a really phenomenal start. We didn't talk a lot about building algorithms, but we did talk about how customers who bought this bought that, or about the personalized recommendations that you see on websites. Those are largely driven by the math of your first day sales. And so giving yourself a lot of time to talk about a book before you release it is always a good thing, whether anybody knows you or not. And getting reviewers to start talking about your book before it launch and building that buzz is critical.
Yeah, I would add the free first in series program that Kelly called out, that Kobo does. That's all self-up. There isn't a New York publishing office in the running for most of those spots. That's us trying to, because as Erin said, in most cases you don't want to give that stuff away. There's no magic. I don't have like a pocket full of pixie dust for getting noticed. But there are a bunch of tactics, and as a retailer, we absolutely respond to that by I don't need a sales rep to have sold it to me to pay attention to a book, but I do need it to perform. I won't take a book that I have neutral feelings for and make it into a superstar, but I will have very warm feelings towards that book that's just, accelerating, and I know I can pour gasoline on it and really get something out of it.
Yeah, and to give you an example, a lot of those slides where I said that's one of our books that's number one. One of those was Angel Bound. Angel Bound is by Ink Monster. To date, they have 4 books. There are 2 series with 2 books apiece, and they have done nothing but grow from the time they launched, partially by using the strategy, by creating a website, by driving demand, by tweeting out kind of outrageous things sometimes to get some attention, but to get followers. And by the time their book 1 came out, it hit the top 10 on Apple. So, and it's just grown from there.
Nathan, from the point of view of a small publisher, not an independent author, but a small publisher,
Yep.
how do we get Kobo and the other guys to allow us small folks to have the pre-sale capability?
Good question. So, Kobo is absolutely the last guys in the game for pre-orders, so we've only had even the capability for just over a year now. We've only just automatically enabled it for accounts where we've seen a high integrity between metadata and then what actually happens. So nobody wants to be publishing, say, putting pre-orders for sale, for example, that never manifest in the book or manifest on the wrong day or wrong price or all kinds of. So anybody who's got a really good record of that, the check mark automatically engaging all their pre-orders. We can manually flip switches. We can do that, and for small publishers, we do a lot of that. Kelly is notorious for sending us lists of Inscribe clients where we're ready to activate pre-orders. Where she, as Inscribe, it has a high degree of confidence that goods will be delivered, but so far the only goods is metadata, so we kindly enable pre-orders. So we can do that for you. And if you want to come up after, I'll give you my card. We'll figure out how we'll do that between us.
Or through me.
Or through Kelly. Or through Kelly.
I have a follow-up question. So you're saying that they have to have a good track record of already putting their book out when they say, but it's your first book, you don't have a track record, so how do you get
So yeah, I mean, on a micro scale, I don't. So the solution we got will not work for self-published authors because it doesn't make any sense. But it's how we manage most of the accounts. Of, how do we solve a big problem with an elegant solution? And it's been that. How do we determine, does Random House UK get to activate all their pre-orders? Well, is their integrity as good as Hachette France? So I don't have a great solution for self-publish. I believe, a little bit on my area of expertise, that we're in the experimental stages now on enabling pre-orders on things that have come to us through the Kobo Writing Life self-publishing platform. We haven't rolled it out to all clients, so we're still figuring that out.
And I'm sorry, Kelly, I would also add to that we see a lot of self-publishers who are using a tool like NetGalley to accumulate buzz about a title, not for the attention of people who are potentially buying it, but for the attention of retailers, for the attention of traditional publishers, for the attention of agents that might pick that up. So I think anything that you can do to demonstrate that there's an audience for your book, and that you're committed to marketing it in a smart way is going to really help. And and I think that's really key.
The one thing I wanted to make sure that everybody knows is that, and Nathan's too chivalrous to say so as a former retailer, I can give you a little perspective. Pre-orders are a risky business, and if you don't have the file, things are different when you have the actual ebook. But when you don't have the file and you just have the metadata and the cover, as a retailer, you're making a promise to that customer that you're going to provide that ebook on that day. As an author, if you're not done writing the book and you forget your book is up for pre-order, all of a sudden the retailer is taking a bunch of money and not providing a product. And that's where the risk factor of doing it globally across the board for all books is concerned. As a distributor, we run into that too. We have a lot of great self-published authors and smaller publishers where we're doing pre-order because we're guaranteeing that we're going to provide that file. And we do the follow-up. So we're saying it's 4 weeks and we don't have your file. It's 3 weeks and we don't have your file. It's 2 weeks. And at 2 weeks, we're going to push your date so that you don't lose those customers and you don't lose those pre-sales because you didn't expect it. So having that safeguard is really what he's talking about guaranteeing it for some people and others. It's not a matter of preference, it's a matter of that bond that they have to the customer and the obligation that they have to the customer to protect their money and their interests.
I have kind of a different, interesting question, but so I am a hit songwriter in Nashville, and I wrote my first children's book, and decided to self-publish it. Then when I got my hit song in Nashville, I kept my publishing life, and the music world and the book world are two very different beasts to deal with. And what I'm kind of finding out is I think I would rather be with a publishing company with books, especially since I have the followers and I have, the connections to kind of do it that way. So now that I'm like self-published, how do I switch over to do like my next book with other people, like with a publishing company, and then continue to market? Because I have marketing people in the entertainment business, but they don't necessarily know the book world, and I just feel like I'm trying to collide two things that don't necessarily.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So the first thing I would say is you have a name because you published a hit song, and you have the book out there for people to read. So the first thing I would do is send that link to agents to get you a publishing contract. Getting that connection to an agent, it's an easy thing for them to read your EPUB. It's a heck of a lot easier than the slush piles that they used to get. And I would just hook it with, hey, and by the way, I have these followers and I have this thing. All the things that we're talking about marketing, you just turn around and market them to an agent to get the publishers behind. And when a publisher buys the rights, believe me, that self-publisher is going to come
Will they
down
buy
really
it from
fast.
the book I already did, or just from future books? Like
No.
It's up to you.
I don't know, Inscribe Digital used to do Sylvia Day self-publishing. Bare to You was actually one of the Inscribe Digital titles.
Right.
Penguin read it on NetGalley when we were promoting it and bought the rights from her. So we had it up for 6 months and then ended up taking it down because Penguin bought the rights. And now I'm sure a few of you have read that title. So it's fine to sell the book you already have self-published, and it actually makes it easy for them to see what the work you've done.
The only caveat I would not caveat. The only thing I would advise is things like that where we've seen the new economy of acquisition is not about acquiring something here at BEA and then publishing it in 2016 or acquiring it at Frankfurt. It's buying the rights of the thing that's hot right now. Readers are paying money for this thing right now. Buy that and then you reap the return in could be the same quarter, definitely the same fiscal year. So the trick is when the rights change over like that, because it's a live thing in the marketplace with real readers engaging with it, you just got to be delicate about. Most publishers are very good at this now. Everyone's kind of figuring this out. But it's just critical that the book can't disappear, because the availability of the book and who it's coming from is not a customer problem. That is not a problem for them to worry about. It just always has to be available, and ta-da! It's kind of Indiana Jones and the switching the weight thing. It's kind of got to work like that. So it's always available. Customers can buy it, and at some point somebody started taking money differently on the other end. But who cares? The book has always been available and growing in popularity.
And I'm afraid we're going to have to do a last question. We've already run a little over our time. Oh no, we don't. We have a few more minutes. I think till 2:50. So we can do a few more questions. So let's start here.
Okay. We talked about low price marketing and other price promotions available, but does pricing strategy change for specifically the pre-order? Like, do you keep it at a low price because it's a pre-order, especially on a first book in the series, or?
So there's a couple of things that I would say. The first is I would always leave yourself some room to mark down. So if you ever want to do like an Amazon daily deal, for example, that has to be the lowest price that book's ever been offered at. So if you go out at 99 cents, then you have no space to go after that pre-order is done for 2 years until that has fallen out of all of these algorithms that they look at trying to figure out what book that they're going to pick. Not all retailers are as strict as that, but since that one is pretty concrete, I would say I think it's great to promote a discounted price for a pre-order, but don't put yourself in a corner with your future pricing strategy. And think about at least 6 months of pricing before the book launches, so that you know that, okay, on day 2 of the release, I'm going to raise that price to $3.99, or I'm going to raise that price to $7.99. And then what does that mean for your pre-order price? Do you make it half off? Nathan?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. consider the fact that a pre-order is, it's a promise to pay when the book comes out. So, yeah, it's a less tangible thing. I wish I had more science behind this. It's an area where we're doing some research, but I think Kelly's got it right. Be mindful of your constraints.
And you had a question next?
I just heard about Instagram today, and I just was wondering, do you have, you look at the case studies, but do you have, off the top of your head, examples of how it improved companies' ebook business, or?
Well, like I said, that's. Oh, I'm sorry. She was asking. She said she just heard about Inscribe today, and she was wondering if we had case studies about how we've improved customers' business. We do, and we have clients that are willing to give us recommendations and talk about their own business. Obviously, that slide I put up about book 2 compared to book 1 was given to us by a publisher who wanted to show how they were doing in the process. But that would be something that we'd have to get permission to share. Okay, and then. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're behind the microphone. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I just had a question about something y'all said earlier about timing. I'm actually a food and travel writer, and I'm a traditionally published nonfiction author getting ready to publish my novel. And I'm thinking about doing it myself. And so my dilemma is I have a lot of editors who want to help me, but hearing y'all talk about the lead time that one has to have and to get the people excited. But then if you're someone who's trying to rely on media coverage in order to help sell the book and create that buzz that your book has to be available when that media coverage comes out. So are y'all influenced by media coverage that an author would send you, or the promise of that, or as a potential audience or readership grower?
My honest answer would be, I would be, as a retailer, me and my team, we're influenced by the same kind of media that you would be influenced by as a reader, right? There are outlets that you can get yourself quoted in and get something, but we all know what it's worth, and it's not going to drive readers. And there are other outlets that will absolutely drive readers. So that's kind of not all. This is my profound insight: is not all media is equal.
I'm referring to feature articles.
Yeah, I think it really depends, and this is the tricky bit is the persuasion part of if your book is highly relevant in a local market, then something that's very esoteric and local might actually be exactly the right way to get written up. But it's not going to, to multinational, global, friendly neighborhood ebook seller, it might not exactly get it. That said, if the coverage is meaningful and it really does something for you, then the numbers will speak for themselves, especially if you're working with your ABA affiliated local stores and they're driving sales. Sales are data, and data is very persuasive.
Yeah, and that's the beauty to pre-order, right? Because they can see the media hits. The book may not be out, but they can see how many people pre-ordered it when they saw the article, and that's where you really see, oh, okay, this is something I can really merchandise. This is something that I can put on the new releases, and it's going to get some interest, even if it's a month after the.
Yeah, the other thing I would say too is just, traditional publicity, this is why the pub date is so important, because traditional publicity is trying to center all of that media attention around the publication. And so, from the retailer's perspective, that was because you'd want to walk into the store and be able to buy it, before the days of pre-orders. But from the publicity perspective, it's because you want all of that buzz generated around a specific time frame. Now, orchestrating that is a hard job, but I think it's, for me, it's really important to have a publication date. It's important that it's in the future. A lot of media still work on long lead times. They plan their articles, especially if it's nonfiction. So I think knowing that you're invested in this, that you're thinking 6 months in advance, rather than, I just published this novel 2 weeks ago, and I want you to review it in such and such magazine. So I think the publication date still has a lot of relevance as a focal point, and it certainly does on NetGalley.
And one last question.
Good luck.
publisher does exclusively SF, fantasy, and horror. And is there any kind of strategy that works particularly well for those kinds of books than like that, those genres, rather than say other genres? Because ebooks are 50% of our business now.
Yeah, sci-fi fantasy, I mean, in my experience, sci-fi fantasy and horror are one of the best places to use something that's free because there's so many series and people are always looking for new authors. It's very similar to romance in that way, that people are willing to experiment because they read so much more than the average bear. I read a Time magazine article that said the average person reads one book a month, and the average romance or sci-fi reader reads more like 3 to 4 books a week. And that's an average, you know, so there are people that are reading 7 books a week or 8 books a week, and given that, they just never have enough. They're always voracious. It's also an area that looks to social media for recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we do a lot of limited time promotions in genres like that. So we do, like, this book is available for the first 1,000 readers, like the one that was up on the screen, and like on NetGalley, that might take 7 or 8 minutes. And then, you know, after that,
we're on NetGalley, so I want to do that.
Yeah, you should definitely do that. I mean, you know, and so like that's a really good way to, because what that does is people, you know, start getting that email and then they start tweeting that. I got one of those. I got one of those. I did get one of those. Oh, why didn't I get one of those? I want one of those. I can't wait to read that. And so you get this enormous like you're only giving away a certain amount of copies, but you get this enormous groundswell of interest in the title, and you get people that still might get a chance to get it because they can still request it, and they're interested that way. So it's a lot, and it's fun, right?
It's like making them line up around a nightclub.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
You know, I mean, if you see people lined up around a nightclub, you know, you want to know what's going on in there, right? So.
All right, well, thank you all for attending. Please fill out the evaluation.